Okay, so it's 3 o'clock. We're going to get started. We just passed 200 folks, which I'm extremely happy that folks have come in and participated, shown up early. I love that. On other events I do, I give out prizes for showing up 1 minute early. You know, it's a really important thing to those of us that are organized to actually find out people are here. And to the panel, thank you very much for showing up. I just wanted to briefly introduce myself and the GovCon Chamber as the host of this event and why we do this. So my name is Neil McDonnell. I spent 20 years after I got out of the Army as a government contractor, small business. The end of 2017, I sold my last company and decided to just flip to the other side and help small businesses through the GovCon Chamber. For many of you who've known me for a while, it was the Hub Zone Chamber, and now it's the GovCon Chamber, because we're trying to help everybody. And we help at the tide level. We want to raise the tide just a little bit. We don't try to be experts at these very, like we're not trying to be a CMMC expert. We're trying to be a communication expert, right? And guide you to maybe CMMC experts. And so for us, it's really important we just teach the process. Any video I ever do, I say government contracting is not a secret. It's just a process. And for a lot of us, the process is a secret. So we got to, get that secret out there. And the reason we're doing this event is because we listen to DoD as they go around and do, and we did this before any of the challenges we have right now. We knew we wanted to do this event because CMMC is rolling out throughout DoD. It's a fact of life. So how do we get out there and help contribute to sharing that message to maybe audiences who aren't hearing it in the traditional ways? We'll reach out in other ways. And we've got other contexts. And so if a lot of us do that, we'll reach everybody. That's a big part of what we're trying to do. And in a minute, I'm going to talk about what I'm hoping our goal is for today's event. But I wanted to stop and just let the panel introduce themselves. And actually, if I'm looking at my screen, so if I just ask Katie, and then Stacy, and then Sherry, and then Vibhaa, and Kat, that's how I see you on my screen. If you can kind of just go in that order and briefly introduce yourselves.
So hi, Katie Arrington, CISO for Acquisition and Sustainment here at OSD. I like to think myself as the mommy of the CMMC. So hello, and I don't know about the rest of you, but I feel like I'm on the Brady Bunch, and I'm Marsha.
I'm Stacy Bostjanick. I'm the director of CMMC working with Katie. I'm older than her, but she's my mommy right now. So, and I'm working to get it all put together with the policy and the different contractual regulations. And I guess I'd be Cindy, maybe.
Sorry, Kat, I don't know where it's going to go.
Me?
No, sorry, but I don't know for the Brady Bunch what you get at the end.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Sorry, Sherry. And then Sherry, you're on mute, by the way.
There you go. I'm Sherry Savage. I'm with DLA. We manage the PTAP program, and I am the PTAP program manager. And I guess I'm Peter or Alice.
So you are actually, no, I am Florence Henderson. Yes. You sadly, Stacy, look like you're Greg. You're Peter, Sherry. Sorry.
Oh, wait a minute. Mashed potatoes and applesauce.
Pork chops and applesauce.
There you go.
That's what it is.
And Vibhaa.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Vibhaa Vermani. I'm the CEO of Chitra Productions. Chitra is a Hub Zone woman-owned, just newly graduated 8A firm in the arena of cybersecurity technology training. And I know there's a lot of people here with the PTAC. I'm very thankful really to the PTAC. Linda Owen out of Virginia, PTAC has truly been my mentor and has helped me throughout my journey. And I know there's a lot of contracting officers and small business specialists and many of my partners from the large primes. Really tremendous gratitude. So thank you. And who am I, Katie? Mama?
You're Alice.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'm Katherine Deming. I am from Business Engineering, BEI. We are located in Reston, Virginia, and we do managed services. So we're doing a lot of the IT, sort of fill in the gaps when you have that POAM, when you need that gap assessment, that's kind of where we're stepping in on the cybersecurity side to help people out. We have a lot of government contractor clients, so we're helping them out and helping some new people out.
Just a couple of quick housekeeping stuff before we get started. One is, for those of you who don't know, we've been trying to coordinate the panelists virtually, again, even before this happened. And so Katie Arrington was scheduled to be at one place, then another, and both those buildings came down with multiple cases of COVID. And Katherine, can you let me know, first off, thank you for finding the final place where Katie's at, but can you give us a little shout out plug for the organization that's hosting you guys?
Absolutely. So Katie and I are at Intelligent Office. We are at the satellite one in Arlington. It's part of the Tyson's Reston Arlington group of intelligent offices. And so they've been so kind to give us 2 conference rooms here and let us plug in and do our Zooms from here.
Yeah, they were awesome. I really appreciate the fact that they did that. They did that last night. We had another place in the morning that then went down. And this goes into the second thing. Katherine's replacing us as a panelist for Misha Nazir, who's also running into health challenges right now. And so I send my prayers out, and I know everybody else does, to her for speedy recovery. She might even actually be online watching it because she's at home. But watch for when we bring her back as the central point of another panel. But Katherine, thank you for coming on at the last minute yourself. And speaking out, she's an aspiring CISO if you've looked at her LinkedIn. So we've got this great panel. I'm excited about the panel. Another housekeeping thing for everybody, again, is if you haven't seen the gallery view, you can go up to your top right and do that. It's the last time I'm going to kind of say it here. So Misha says she has no voice. So she got to today, she can watch and listen, but no voice. Anyway, so speaker view, you can do that. If we go through and you have questions, please submit them. Whether we get to them today or we follow up, we'll get them answered for you. I know DOD and the other panelists are interested in making sure the questions you have are answered. And so I mentioned that the way I'm going to go through this is similar to what I describe as a Sunday morning talk show. You have several panelists and you just kind of guide through on a similar topic. Our topic today is the cybersecurity maturity model. And Katie, I'm going to start with you because from a very high level, there's many people I would submit who are on this call who it's the first time they're hearing it or the first time they're hearing it kind of the way you describe it. But can you let us know what is CMMC and why is CMMC?
So the CMMC is the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification. We, Stacy Bostjanick, my jam, we created the model with a great team of individuals from Johns Hopkins, APL, Carnegie Mellon, SEI, but more importantly, industry. I came from a background of small businesses that wanted to get involved with the government, and it's really hard. And we needed a way to streamline at least some of the things. The number one thing would be the cybersecurity standards. There are so many of them. We have NIST 800-171R1, we have NIST 800-53, we have NIST-CFS, the cybersecurity framework, we have ISO 27001, we have the AIA standard. There's just so many. And for anybody wanting to get involved with the government, I actually just hung up from an hour-long telecom with the SAE Dr. Roper of the Air Force. And part of their challenge was make it easy. We don't want to burden industry. We want them to come to us. And I know there are a lot of PTACs on the call today, and you are going to be a huge part to solving this problem. So pay attention. We created a model based on maturity for a company. It was, basic level 1, which is CMMC level 1, which is equal to the FAR 52. That is currently in most contracts today that have 17 basic cybersecurity requirements that are of no cost, but need to be done to protect not only the national defense, to which we don't exist without you, but yourselves, your IP, your company. We built the model based on levels 1 through 5. So as you progress up, level 1 is basic cyber hygiene. Level 2 is a building block for small business primarily. You will never see CMMC level 2 in any given contract. It's to help small businesses ramp up on how they move from 17 controls and requirements in level 1 all the way up to 130 in level 3. So CMMC 2 is when we start implementing process into it, into your cybersecurity posture, helping you with guidebooks for handbooks for your company, putting processes in place. Because at level 3, CMMC level 3, is the instantiation of what's in most government contracts today, which is Defense Federal Acquisition Regulation 252.204.7012, which came to life in 2014, was rolled into all contracts that touch controlled unclassified information in 2017, and is the instantiation of those 110 controls. So companies that are on the phone now that have that DFAR clause in your contract, you're already self-attesting to the government you're doing those 110 controls. But because we don't want to gig you, we don't want you to leave, we needed to create a way that we could actually take that NIST standard, those ISO standards. And I say there, it's like the Tower of Babel. All of those different standards were saying the same thing. They wanted the same output, but they had a different dialect. We took all of them together. So when you go to the guide, when you look at each of the controls, it lists where the standard is duplicative, where you can find it in multiple standards. Then the next thing it does is it actually says what the control is, and then it translates it into English. It's called the clarification. And then the next thing you'll see are examples in small business terms, what we're actually talking about. So we created the model. An accreditation body stood up to receive the model, to create the training, to train the C3PAOs, the cyber third-party auditing organizations. And they're going to train the trainers, get the assessors out there, because the government does not have enough resources to do this. We needed to make it scalable so that we could get third parties to audit companies' capability and ingest that into the Department of Defense. So the reason why is the biggest thing. We're losing our collective to our adversaries. $600 billion a year is being lost every year to our adversaries, and data rights lost, IP lost, R&D lost, and straight up cyber espionage. And we needed a way to help our industry partners get secure and to be the backbone of the national industrial base. You know, all this conversation that we've had about the past couple of days about the Defense Production Act and what the DIB really means. Stacy and I work for the Department of Defense. We are loyal government employees, but we build nothing. And it's our industrial-based partners that do the heavy lift. And without you, we're nothing. We really are nothing. You are what is saving this country right now. You are stabilizing the world's economy. We need you, but we needed a way to make sure that we had a level playing field. So the CMMC is rolling out to RFIs near you in June 2020. We're in the process of a DFAR rule change, and this will become part of RFPs rolling out in the fall of 2020.
Yeah, I think, and that's a lot in there. One of the questions is interesting, as you were talking, two questions that popped up, which is exactly why I like doing these panels. One was, is that model that you were talking about published?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, oh yeah. So we put links in to the chat. I'm hoping somebody on my team did that already, putting links in there for you to be able to access that.
And we actually, yesterday on the website, Stacy, do you want to tell about the update we did yesterday?
Yeah, maybe you can go right into that, Stacy.
So what we did yesterday is we put up on the website, and actually I think it'll be published. It was published today because we had to take a step back and put a COVID-19 page up first. But what we've done is we've gone in and cleaned up that model to make sure that all the administrative issues have been taken care of. We put a couple of other notifications on there. So, and we're going to have an important press release that's going to be coming out here soon. So there'll be more to come. Keep your eyes on our website because
Well, Stacy, you did all the hard work. Tell them what we've done.
Oh, there you go.
well, so we've gotten together with the accreditation body, who's going to be the body that's going to manage this. They're going to be responsible for providing the training to the C3 PAOs to get them accredited and tested and licensed to be able to go out and perform the assessments with the companies. They're going to have a marketplace that they're going to issue registration for classes, so you can go in and register to become a C3 PAO, or you can go in to see where there's a certified organization near you that you can bring in to do the assessments on your company. And so they're going to organize that. They're also going to be reviewing different tools that are out there. The industry has risen to the task. We've got all kinds of interesting tools where companies are coming together to help companies make this easy so it's not an overburden to them. That's going to be included in the website as well. We're building the database, so all that information as you get certified will be transitioned so the government can validate that you have the proper certifications for our RFPs. So we've been rocking and rolling.
So what she doesn't want to say, and I'll do it, is that we executed the MOU with the accreditation body.
Well, I wasn't sure whether or not that was allowed to be.
So Miss Lord will be making there are higher priorities in the department right now that are taking in extraordinarily, and I need to take a minute and say this to everybody. You don't understand what those offices have been doing since the past 3 days. And Ms. Lord took it, one of the higher priorities was to execute the MOU. We drafted an amazing press release, but people's lives far superseded our press conference or what we're going to do. So look for that to be coming out in the coming days, but I want you to know that we haven't stopped. Stacy's team has been amazing in the fact that we have not missed a minute. And when this all started, one of the things I said on the team call was, we have people that are dealing with the crisis at hand, but we still have to remember that as a country, as a nation, as an economy, tomorrow the sun will rise and we will continue to do work. And while we work really hard to ensure that we do our best to maintain the sanctity of life with each other and make sure people stay healthy, that we know we still have missions to meet. And DOD, especially this industrial base, we're not missing a beat. So thank you guys. And look for Ms. Lord's press release next week.
No, that's perfect. And I'm going to bring it back and ask a lot of questions related to the accreditation body and maybe dig a little bit more into the model. Sherry, I wanted to come down though to you with, and you're on mute, just, one of the questions I got asked is exactly what I lined up, is what are the PTACs, right? We talk about how the PTACs, and we could talk in a minute about how the PTACs will help with CMMC, but what are they even just generally out there?
They are DLA's award recipients. We issue cooperative agreement awards to them, and they're always a nonprofit or a governmental entity or Indian tribe, and they pay part of the cost of running their PTAC. So they are as invested as the federal government is in their success. And their role is to provide government contracting assistance to businesses who are trying to get those contracts. So their assistance can be helping you learn who buys what you produce, or helping you know how to find those solicitations. How do you get registered in SAM? They're specifically with regard to this topic, they are going to be trained by those, I think you call them C3 PAOs.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the people who are going to train the certifiers are also going to train the PTACs. So the PTACs are going to have the same great information that will be used to certify you, but the PTACs reason for having that information is just to walk you through it, hold your hand all the way through your self-assessment, so that the businesses have an understanding of the expectations and how they can be successfully CMMC certified. And all of it's free. The federal government pays for the PTACs so that businesses don't have to pay.
Yeah, and
We have PTACs in almost every state. Sorry, Neil, do you want to go ahead?
No, I was just going to lead right to that. You can talk about that, but in the chat for everybody, as Sherry is talking about it, there's a link in there to the DLA PTAC site. So then go ahead.
Right. It's also easy to find your local PTAC if you just Google DLA PTAC. If you lose the link or anything, you can always just Google it. And there is one, at least one in every state except for Hawaii and South Carolina. And most states have several different locations where you can receive your services. And again, it's always free to you.
Yeah, for those of you who
Over
were
to
on
you, Neil.
early, yeah, thanks. For those of you who were on early, you might have heard Vibhaa, who's our next panelist here, talking to Sherry about how great an experience she's had with her PTAC and taking full advantage of the relationship and what they offer, frankly, to your business's success, Vibhaa. And you're on mute, but I'm going to ask you a question because one of the reasons I asked Vibhaa to come on and as representing a CEO or business owner is we can talk about CMMC from a government level, and this is what it looks like, and this is what we envision it. But I also wanted you to just see it from a business owner perspective of, what are we looking at? And Vibhaa, my question to you, I guess, at the start here is how different is what you're hearing, CMMC is going to be to what you've already been doing?
So thank you for that question. I've been tracking this for a while because I do pay attention very closely to the changing regulations within the small business arena, as well as anything that's going to impact me and fellow small business owners. I think there is nothing to be scared. If there's obviously there's small business community owners, CEOs, and other members from small businesses here. It's nothing to be scared of. And to what Katie is saying, I mean, this war doesn't look like what it used to many, many years ago. It's really, it's cyber war now. And we're being proactive, and we do have a lot of information that we need to protect. So this change that's coming, I see it as a step in the right direction. Level 1, 2, and 3 does not scare me at all. I just feel like this is something we're already doing. We're paying great attention to it. So small business owners, let's embrace this. This is nothing to be scared of.
No, that's perfect. I appreciate that. And I mean, that's what I think industry needs to hear out there, because there's various levels of experience we have. Some of us understand cyber. For some of us, that's just a part of our operations, important, but we're more focused on what we do. And Kat, I might pull over to you on this, because just on a kind of a quick level for level 1, one of the things I've heard Katie Arrington talk about in different places, and Katie, correct me if this has changed a little bit in the way you're messaging, but that many of us small businesses really going to be looking at level 1.
Yes.
And, okay, good. And for me, I always say, don't worry about level 2, 3, or 4, or 5 if you're not even 1, right? Yeah. So for this conversation, I was really trying to go, what's 1? And Kat, when I look at level 1, or when you look at level 1, forget about the FAR for a second, just complexity. How complex does it seem, or how would you describe that to maybe some of your customers who are looking at level 1?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that it's complex at all. There are certainly a few things that you might need spelled out. Maybe need to reference somebody who knows a little bit about IT. But the great thing about CMMC, what they've done with the appendices, which Katie referenced earlier, is really given those real world examples and taken particularly what's in 800-171 and spelled it out in between, giving the real world example. So that's awesome. And when I look at level 1, I just try to think about who are these government contractors who are maybe working out of their house, right? They don't even have a space. Can they do this? And everything that's in level 1, they can do. Some things might be easier to do in a commercial space than at your house, right? But I think everything that's in level 1 can easily be done for those home-based government contractors, and definitely in a commercial space. And to what Katie was also saying earlier, fairly inexpensively. You know, most of these things are things that you're already doing that you immediately when you get a computer or when you set up your home network. So there's a few tweaks here or there. There's things you need to be making sure that you're doing. You know, I wouldn't use free anti-malware, antivirus. I would always pay for something like that. But outside of those types of things, it's going to be level 1, definitely something that's attainable for anyone.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. I appreciate it. And I'm going to come back and dig a little bit more into that as we go along. Katie, one of the things that I was seeing with as this is rolling out and how it'll hit the contracts, there's all these questions people have about the rollout. And I know that your team is in the rollout. So it's like, there's a lot of questions you also have on your plate you're ready to answer. But I'm curious what level of answer you can kind of give us as, you know, longer term, not just the first 10, but what's it going to look like as CMMC gets integrated into contracts? Like, what should we be thinking about from the RFI to RFP phase and how it kind of gets integrated?
First things first, right? Security is not one size fits all. So most contracts that you'll see, they'll either be, so let me break. For that DFAR clause I talked about, that the one ending in 7012, you have to be touching or transmitting CUI, controlled unclassified information. Out of the 300,000 companies in the supply chain, you have to remember about 15,000 of those are actually those companies doing level 3, CMMC level 3. It's a very small portion. Most contracts have, we talk a lot about government contracting, and remember that 99.7% of contracts are done under acquisitions under $350,000. You only hear about the super big ones, right? But most of the transactions that we move are really small. So the CMMC level 1 was set up. You'll see most contracts actually have CMMC level 1, but those that have level 3, you won't just see level 3. You'll see that the prime needs to be level 3. But as the flow down of information goes, as we look at what the sub is supposed to be doing, that's the level of certification they're going to require. So if the prime has, they're required to do CMMC level 3, and you're one of the subs, and all you're doing as a sub is providing a service that never touches any CUI, you're a level 1. And remember, that level 1 certification that you got for that one piece of work is good for all of DoD work, OTAs, SIPRs, STTRs, grants. So one certification lasts for 3 years.
Let me ask a quick clarifying question on that. When you look at the levels, and there's 5 levels, and I think if I heard it correctly, we're really not anticipating level 2 having a count, right? So we're 1 and then 3. What are you, because you just said 15,000. So from a high level, what are you thinking when you say level 3, level 4, level 5? How many you see companies potentially having to go there? And the reason I say is because many of us out there going, oh my God, I gotta be level 5. No, you don't.
0.06% of all DoD contracts will have level 5, and 0.06 will have level 4. That's by our analysis right now. We're not talking a lot.
Say for level 5?
0.06.
So they're both 0.06.
Where we are today.
Yeah, no, which is, and this is the message that'll be great for, I know there's a lot of small business professionals from DoD on this call, and that's a lot of what they're getting is their small business industrial base calling up and saying, oh my God, it's going to cost me 7 figures to get this, and I haven't even got my first contract. Nope. Yeah, well then maybe you're missing a piece of information, which you're sharing today.
So yes, and whoever just said that, I do have a New York accent. Yes, I do. I can't help it.
That's funny, you are watching that.
Oh, I am. I'm actually keeping track of all that. But I'm going to actually let Stacy respond to that, because we really worked hard. Her team specifically worked really hard to ensure that the model, first and foremost, I mean, when we talk about what instructions when we started this was, they were really simple, right? The founding pillars of the CMMC are, first and foremost, it must be economical. Second, If the 8th grader cannot read it, what did I say, Stacy?
It's not right, right? Because we've got to make it easy. And that's one of our biggest plans, is to make sure that, you know, our assessment guides and the things that we're going to provide make it easy for you to understand, and we drill it down. And one of the other initiatives that I'm working on, because I know a lot of people complain that, well, my program manager, my contracting officer haven't told me what I have as CUI or what level it is. We're working on documentation for them. It's the layman's guide to CUI, so they can quickly figure out what level their data is and drill it down and how to disaggregate it. So when it goes down the supply chain, we're not going to require people to be at a higher level than need be. And companies understand how to disaggregate that data to be able to get it where it needs to be, and not just hit send and send the entire drawing, but just send the portion that's necessary.
Let me ask a quick housekeeping just for people in the chat. If you're writing questions, if I can get you to put them in the Q&A section, we can begin to kind of rank them in there, and we'll get them after some of these prepared questions. But Stacy, going with what you just said, if I ask a tough question, right? Most of my questions are.
Oh, wait a minute, I didn't sign up for that.
Right. Well, you can always sit there and say, the technology, I couldn't hear that question.
The dogs were barking.
Right. One of the concerns out there is that, like, I hear this, if it's level 3 here and it's the flow down is level 1, for example, what's to stop the larger primes from just requiring 3 and almost kind of excluding that? Is there going to be training that we start doing to the larger primes to encourage them not to falsely push small
And it's also going to assist them from their proposal perspective, right? It doesn't make good business sense for them to make somebody have to rise to the level of a 3 if they don't need to.
Can I just add to that point? And Stacy's one. So in doing the rule change, we actually know how much it's going to cost, and we're not going to pay for what we don't need. So we're going to be very specific in saying this piece of work only requires a level 1. So if you make your prime your sub get a level 3, then you're going to have to figure out the cost, because the government isn't going to pay for it.
Yeah, no, that's, and so that'll be a fun one. So that was my only tough question there for saying. Sherry, as I look at PTACs and the DLA, and as they try to get engaged, I know you would, through an email traffic we were doing, you alluded to some tool, but I'm also curious from a higher level, what involvement DLA is kind of lining up to support the PTACs that are out there, whether there's kind of centralized activity that they'll be able to do. I think my opinion is they seem, a little bit more independent or decentralized, but something like this, a centralized approach could possibly help. What's DLA doing to line up, or what do you guys have lined up over the next year or 2 year vision?
Well, I can tell you that we started training the PTACs 2 years ago, maybe even a little bit more, when the defarce clause that Katie referenced came into place, and we worked with the OSD DPC and the OSD CIO to create a self-assessment checklist, and then we distributed it to the PTACs and trained them on how to guide businesses through that self-assessment checklist. So DLA coordinates with OSD to help bring the expert trainers to the PTACs, and the PTACs have a training conference 2 times every year where they hear from us and from other government agencies, because we make sure that their training stays very relevant. And moving forward with the CMMC, we reached out to Katie and asked if she and Stacy could provide that same training at the PTACs conference. And we just had one in Chicago, and unfortunately they weren't able to attend, but they coordinated with Project Spectrum, who is an OSD contractor that is contracted to provide training for the PTACs and for other small businesses. So that they have a website. They're not completely stood up yet from what I understand, but that's called projectspectrum.io. And it's a really good news story because that's actually a small business called 𝐓𝐡𝐿 that is a mentor protege. And the OSD Office of Small Business Programs has a contract with them to provide the training. So we plan on leveraging the project spectrum, and we are continuing to provide training through Stacy and Katie and their team and resources. And as I already said, Katie has arranged to have the PTACs trained along with the certifiers. And I also wanted to say, Katie reminded me, the PTACs themselves will all have to be level 1 CMMC. So any business that comes to a PTAC for assistance with CMMC certification at level 1 will know that their PTAC has already been through it.
And we wouldn't be able to do this, in all honesty. And now, granted, I have a New York accent, but I was a legislator in South Carolina. I love South Carolina. We don't have one. But we need, when we started this, I mean, if we don't have the PTACs, I mean, they've done a fantastic job over the past year. Just the training that I've actually been to or participated, we absolutely, the accreditation body, one of the first phone calls that we had with them was, you know, hey, we need to get the PTACs ramped up and ready to go, because they're our small business, you know, I say the bridge or the connectivity to help them understand how to do business. So can't say enough about PTACs. I was actually on the phone with Senator Hirono today from Hawaii, her staff, and they're like, why don't we have a PTAC? So coming, somebody in Hawaii, he's gonna have to set it up, but they're essential. And we in the government, the whole CMMC, you know, revolution is really about using what we have at our fingertips and just coordinating and consolidating. All of these different standards have been there. The DLA and what they offer have been there with the PTACs. It's bringing everybody together and making the best use of all of our combined knowledge and our expertise and our passion, but moreover, making the best use of taxpayer dollars. I mean, that's like thing one. We got to buy down the cost on this. Sorry, go ahead.
Ask you really quick, Katie, because before I move on to other questions, as it relates to the way to communicate. No, but as it relates to the way the communication happens, am I correct in saying it kind of this way, softly, right? You have PTACs are out there, almost your first touch point, because they can guide you there. So you should be talking to your PTACs, getting to know them. PTACs are getting their guidance from the accreditation board and DOD, but the accreditation board is then answering to DOD. So it's like, there's your chain of command. Yes, you can go to DOD and look at their website. Yes, you can go to the accreditation board, but there's a lot of interpretation that might happen where when you go to the PTAC, you're getting counseling, I guess, or, you know, that basic consulting service.
Neil, that's exactly it. Like, so the AB body is going to be about training the trainers, right? And making sure that the people doing the audits are inspected and overseen. The training is that whole issue. When you're a small business and you have a question or you have a challenge to get to work with the government, it's PTAC. That's down there, those guys.
Let me ask you one hard question.
Yeah, I'm doing the Sherry thing. They're right there.
Yeah, a minute ago, Stacy reached behind me and touched you on my screen. It was like crazy. Let me ask you a question, because the PTACs are so valuable, and I want to come down and ask with Vibhaa and Kat from a more on the ground, boots on the ground kind of questions. But from the PTAC, I see the invaluable contribution they're going to make to this. What has DOD thought about as it relates to the Veteran Business Center, Women Business Center, Small Business Development Centers, and the SBA general field offices that interact with a lot of small businesses, even the 8A, right? The 8A business opportunity specialists who work with all the 8A firms and other small businesses that are reaching out. Has there been talk yet with them at that level that's similar to the PTAC, or is that in the future, or is that a good idea?
Well, I can tell you from the PTAC standpoint, and then I'm going to have to pass it over to Katie to let you know what she has thought of. But those other programs that you just mentioned are all owned by SBA. They are not DOD programs. So I think that probably Katie and Stacy reached out to the PTACs because the PTACs are a DOD program and they can control us. they have the ability to leverage because we are their asset. We don't have the ability to set terms and conditions for those SBA owned programs. However, the PTACs do collaborate extensively with all of those programs, and I work with SBA leaders to foster that collaboration and to kind of keep our lines clear about where our support has to start and stop and where theirs start and stop, because all the programs are operated under statutory authority, and our mandates are pretty clear in the statute. And so, for example, PTACs can't help entrepreneurs set up businesses, and they help small and large businesses. The SBA programs are supposed to help entrepreneurs, and they are only supposed to help small businesses. So there are some differences among the programs because of the statutes that authorize our funding, but we work together to make sure that businesses get what they need. So PTACs very often make referrals to SBDCs or to Department of Commerce has programs called Manufacturing Extension Partnerships. The PTACs collaborate with all of those programs.
No, that's perfect. And that's kind of the idea down the line, is where they all interact, because a lot of us sometimes might feel the message is confusing out in the field. And if we can start going PTACs, AB, DOD, it gives us a path that, you know, many of us who are on the call are communicating. Vibhaa, I wanted to ask you a question on, as it related to just interacting with your existing customers and your existing primes, because although it is, you know, the way the message is right now is we're rolling out kind of slow with CMMC, but your customers are going to begin to look at it themselves, you know, your large primes, especially since you play in that world. What kind of advice do you have for the smalls that are on the line about beginning that dialogue with the folks that are out there? And remember, you're on mute.
Thank you for that question, Neil. So we work with many large primes, whether it's Mantech, CSEI, Booz Allen, and what we have seen is, especially getting the education currently from Katie and Stacy today, I was feeling pretty comfortable about this whole thing, but even more so now as a small business, that if they're going to give us swim lanes, that we don't need level 4 or level 5, and we really just need to be level 1 or level 2. I think that is a tremendous ease of mind to me and to businesses like myself already. And so, you know, we do look, as a small business owner, I do look at, you know, RFIs that are going out full and open, and I start marketing our company's proof of performance, CFARs, what have you, to larger companies. And this would be another layer, which I think is really a needed layer. This is here to protect our country and all of us. So I think I will be vigilant, but I'm feeling very much at ease listening to Stacy and Katie, that it's not going to be a broad brush approach, that for small businesses, you'll give us a swim lane, if that answers the question.
It does, and I'm with you. It's given me tremendous confidence that really the bulk is that level 1. We want people to start going to 3, but level 1 is where the bulk is, and that's where people need to start. And Katie or Katherine, maybe I come back and ask you about level 1, because a lot of people on this call haven't looked at the CMMC. Sorry, Katie.
That's all right.
You know, so this part of this call is I wanted to say, look at the 17 practices on level 1 for a second and really see them for what they are, like what Vibhaa was saying, that they're pretty straightforward, and they're what generally we've been doing. It's what we would do almost for our house, let alone our business, which is a revenue generator and a job creator. So can you share a little bit about some of the examples? Like, I know 3 of them are virus protection related. Can you share a little bit examples of just what's in level 1 from a kind of ease of knocking them out?
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, I mean, let's hit the virus protection one. So that domain is like the system and information integrity domain. And the very first one for level 1 is patch management, and that's very much automated, right? So you have your computer, you make sure that you're downloading security updates and critical updates from Microsoft for your system. And then the other 3 within that domain are antivirus, anti-malware type things. So making sure you're paying for a good anti-malware and antivirus. You could use, just AV. Sometimes anti-malware doesn't play well with certain things, but a lot of people use both. Making sure that you're using that, and that's going to be real time kind of scanning things, making sure you're updating all of those definitions, which is typically just flipping on a switch within your AV or your anti-malware program so that it's automatically updating those signatures. And then the third thing is just to periodically scan your system. And that sort of plays into the one before. So if your antivirus and anti-malware are constantly updating the signatures, then you want to scan your whole system for maybe files that were downloaded a month ago or a couple of weeks ago, and then you rescan with those updated real-time, real-world virus signatures that are out there, and do that against your files that are already on your system. So much of that, for instance, is just automated, right? It's just turning things on, paying for the program, installing it, and then just remembering to run that every now and then.
And there's, when you look in there, there's like 4 that are just on physical access alone, which is kind of what you're doing with your house. Don't let anybody come in unless they say it, and keep the doors locked, track the keys. I mean, my wife does that all the time. Where the heck's that key? We have a spare key. It's gone. When you look at that, are there, I know one in there, I had a question for you about, sometimes if we're not familiar with the jargon, it might get a little confusing, but when we hear it in maybe an analogy, it's less confusing. But what's the difference between an internal network and a publicly accessible network, right? Or a system, when they talk about that, if you think about a customer example or somebody who's on the call.
Yeah, absolutely. So your internal network is, your server with your files on it, your computer in your office, and then obviously there's the internet, right? So you have your public, your website. The public can all go to your website. Presumably it's not behind a password. You want it out there so that people can go visit it. So there's controls in level 1 where it's like, hey, don't put FCI out there on your website, which is kind of a no duh, right? But in the example,
put what out there?
Pardon?
What's the acronym?
Oh, FCI, Federal Contract Information. So
I mean, that's important for people to understand. Just don't take an attachment, just throw it out there that has a contract.
Exactly. So you don't want to put that out there. And I think the example in the CMMC, in the appendices, is about your marketing team, right? Hey, I want to start marketing and saying we're doing all these things. Well, just be careful what you're going to put out in these press releases, and make sure that it's going through an approval process, and that the people that are posting things are limited, right? You don't want everybody able to just put information out. So a lot of that's just procedural. Make sure your social media manager or your website manager, that they're trained and they know what they can put out and what they can't, what they should ask for permission on.
So Kat, what you just said, it's, I joke around when I go out, and like the first rule of Fight Club is don't talk about Fight Club, right? We do such a bad service to ourselves. I get being fully transparent. We created, sorry, I'm sitting on my leg, the CMMC in a completely transparent collaboration with industry. But know that when you go on your website and you say that, hey, we're working on this program, the world is watching, and you have to be careful, and you have to be, we need you to have the critical thinking skills around security, about how do you buy down the risk. Telling somebody that, we just want a contract doing hypersonics and we're working on widget Y for this Department of Defense, you shouldn't want to do that, right? It's that we want you to be able to tell the good news story that you've got work, that you're doing greatness, but we also don't need to make it easier on the adversary on how to get to you. And that was one of the big things on the model. Stacy and I spent hours with the team arguing the fundamentals of do you post your level certification on your website? Do you tell people what level you're certified at? And I said, well, you should say you're certified, but if you say you're only certified to level 1, then I know what you're not doing and I know how to get around that and get to you. So it's the devil's in the details in this, right? Because we are at, we're at cyber war, whether, you want to be, it's not with a particular adversary. It's all out war because it's such an easy way for people to want to get to us, right? You think about kinetic weapons, and it takes, how many years did we develop and plan the F-35? 10 plus years. Think about how much tax dollar investment went into the R&D of the F-35. And China's flying a plane that looks just like it, right? To the same canopy flaws that we had. My mother always said imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. I'm tired of China. I'm tired of North Korea. I'm tired of Iran. I'm tired of Russia copying me. So we have to really think about what we're doing, why we're doing what we're doing. That's part of the biggest thing about the CMMC model is, why do I need you to have critical thinking about cybersecurity? Because it's not just one adversary, it's an entire environment. And kinetic, when you make that weapon, it's very finite. It is a very limited area of impact, where cyber is low cost, high impact area. You can throw 1,000 things at it, and if one hits and one sticks, good. So we needed a way to get to it. So what you said, Kat, was so spot on though. You really got to think about what you're putting on your website, what you put on your LinkedIn profile,
And if I can add on to that sort of real world, and I know that you've talked about this too, but in a previous life, I was a targeter, and we would have targets, right? We would have people or other things that we wanted to know more information about. And a lot of people who you might target, they might know that they're a target, right? So they have great OPSEC. They don't have a LinkedIn. They don't put stuff on their personal Facebook page. But those people have moms and sisters and cousins, and they go to parties and they do things there. And so much of what we would learn about targets were from their network, right? And so this is where the DIB comes down is, sure, maybe the Lockheeds or whoever are super locked down with what they're doing, but all I have to do is find somebody in the chain down below who is not living up to what they said they were doing with CMMC level 1 or even level 3, and just start to work in that way. And I think, one of Katie's examples before, and Stacy, you hinted at it, was the idea that maybe somebody that's doing something, a very small piece of the project, doesn't need the whole plan, doesn't need the whole blueprint, right? And so, but if I'm going after you, if I'm an adversary, I'm like, oh, let me look at this person who happens to be in the supply chain. And I get on there and I'm like, great, they sent them the whole blueprint and all they do is make glue. But that's my way in. And then you start working up, and then you rent the office next door, and then you start chatting them up, and then you try to get a job there. And then all of a sudden you have all of this extra information because they're a weak link.
And so when you think of our cyber assurance testing that we do in the DoD, and you go through that, that's exactly it. And to think that people aren't interested, I always have to smile when a company says, why would they care about me? Why wouldn't they care about you? I mean, the IP on how you run your small business may not necessarily be in code you developed. Maybe it's how you answer your phones and you get your product shipped, and your quality assurance testing that makes your intellectual property unique. Protect that. That's important. And when an adversary can get it, and it doesn't necessarily mean China, Russia, North Korea, anybody, and exploit that, you should want to protect it. We're doing the CMMC because we want these small businesses that literally are the backbone of the industrial base. They are the bedrock to be there. Today, like I said in the beginning of this, we keep moving on the CMMC because the sun will rise, and we do have more, things to take on. This is a big pandemic right now, but we have a future. We have a long, long lifespan in this country that we have to get through, and working together and making sure that we understand that in the Internet of Things, we're all sitting here on Zoom, over 260 people this afternoon, and we are all connected. Think about that. You know, 100 years ago, what would it take to get 260 people in a room together?
Let me bring it back, because a lot of those 260 have questions. And so I'm going to switch to questions faster, I think, to make sure we get as many of theirs and not just the ones I lined up. But one thing I wanted to make sure, we're hearing these examples and they're really driving to the, you know, the why behind a lot of this. But I want to make sure those of you listening also remember that when we talk about raising the tide, we're talking about getting to level 1, or specifically I am, and I know a lot of people agree, getting to level 1, remember, it's not a heavy lift. Right? There's other things that'll be bigger challenges. And so that, you know, when you walk away and the questions you're asking, this is a big part. And so as I go through the questions, I'm looking for the ones that are going to be talking about mostly level 2 and 1, maybe 3, any 4s and 5s, I'm going to keep on going down. And some of them, I'm going to cruise through. So I want to come back to the PTACs, because this is a question that is sitting at the top and it's got a lot. And I know you touched a little bit on it, Sherry, from training, but I might spin the question a little bit, because the question is what training and resources are available for the PTAC to, you know, get the word out there. But also I'm curious, for the PTACs, is there a central place that, you know, those personnel should all be going to? Is it that new tool you talked about, or is there like a DLA site specific for PTACs?
Right, they should be going to projectspectrum.io, and Project Spectrum has reached out to all of them and asked them to schedule their dates for training. So projectspectrum.io is there for them, and once the certifiers are ready for their training, the PTACs will receive training from them, but that's not ready for them yet. In the meantime, the PTACs have already been receiving training and can continue to receive training from other entities. At the conference that I attended with them last week, they received training from several different training providers. Left Brain Professionals was there and trained them. I think Totem was there and trained them. So there is a wide variety of training available to them, but really it's not time for them to be focused that heavily on it yet.
Yeah.
The projectspectrum.io training is due to roll out on April 18th, and then the training from OSD CISO is going to come later. So right now, the best thing for the PTACs to focus on is going through that self-assessment checklist that they already have and seeing what questions do they have, where are their weak areas, and then focus on training themselves on those weaknesses. You know, if they can't answer the question for a business, what is multi-factor authentication, then they can be figuring that out right now while they're waiting for the Project Spectrum training.
Yeah. Can I ask just a quick yes or no? Is that checklist available that can go out publicly to like the smalls to be able to follow that same checklist, or is it only internally available?
No, I believe that's available for anybody. That's probably is a published document, and it's
great.
the scored self-assessment checklist. So it assigns a score to the different items of the NIST 800-171, and so they can learn which things will raise their score higher faster. So it's publicly available, I'm sure.
Okay, yeah, no, we'll push it out. Thanks. And then, and I'm going to kind of go through these questions fairly rapidly to see how many the panel can answer, because there's a lot, and it'd be great if they could, we can answer as many. Stacy, I was going to throw this one your way, because I had written something similar to this in my prep, and I see it here, but there's a two-part question. First is, I was going to ask, there's different stakeholders in the entire CMMC process, right? There's small businesses, maybe there's people who are helping them get cyber ready or something. I've heard the term auditors, assessors. Can you talk to me outside of the, you know, like Vibhaa probably talk to me in a minute about who she uses, but the auditors, assessors, I know they're not ready, you know, for prime time, but what are those roles? We just kind of get used to the right terms that are going to be coming down for who can help us be CMMC 1, for example. And then somebody asked here a bigger question, who can perform the CMMC audits?
So they're going to be the C3PAOs, which are the third-party assessment offices, right? The cyber or CMMC third-party assessment offices. And those will be the ones that the accreditation body will train and certify and accredit to come out and do the assessment of your company, right? To be able to validate that you meet the standards and the requirements in the model. Another side of those companies will also be able to come out and consult. Now, what we have asked strongly is that we have a conflict, no conflict clause from the accreditation body that says you can't go out and consult with the same company you accredit, because there's a fine line.
Want to create a self-licking ice cream cone.
Exactly. So we've asked that there be rules and regulations from that perspective, because what we have to make sure of is that this is rolled out and everyone is treated in the same consistency, to make sure that when we have an audit, it's a valid audit and we can count on it, right? So you're going to have two groups that are going to come through. The accreditation body in and of itself will also have an ability to train and reach out and do some outreach for some of the smaller companies to help them come along as well. So from the stakeholder perspective, that accreditation body is where you're going to really want to focus your attention, because they're going to be your resources to help you get your company through the process and get to be able to achieve your certification. Is that?
I'm going to throw this question. Somebody asked it, but I'm just going to say it's answered, about what are the general requirements for becoming a C3PO, C3PAO, but the body is the one who will be putting out that information continuously, right? So go to that website.
Right. And they will have a registration site for classes where people who are interested in becoming those assessors can go sign up, be trained, be tested to make sure that they can meet the certification requirements to be an auditor. And at that point in time, they will be able to go out and perform assessments. They'll come out, they will perform an assessment based on the guidelines in the model. They will produce a report that will go back to the accreditation body. The accreditation body will do a QA check on it, and they will issue your CMMC level to the company.
Okay, perfect. And then for Kat, there's a question here that says, I don't know if you can see it, but what's your perspective? Can you see it?
Mm-hmm.
Good, you tackle that one, because I'll just keep closing them. But I like summarizing if I can.
Yeah, so I mean, it says, what's my perspective on the role of an MSP, a managed service provider, in a CMMC accreditation chain? And if my clients need to be certified, do I also need to be? And I would say, yeah, I mean, absolutely. If I have access to your network, if I have access to the place where that CUI is, then I need to have a system security plan. I need to have all my ducks in a row. We are currently going through that. I mean, we're paying money. We have, 2 different auditors that we're talking to that's going through things. We're making sure all of our policies and procedures have all of our, I's dotted and T's crossed and everything's in a row, because again, we talk about targets. Like, you don't want a trunk slammer who doesn't know anything about cybersecurity have keys to your entire kingdom. That doesn't make sense. So you got to lock up all those places. So MSPs, absolutely. They should have all the documentation if they can get certified. We'll see, hopefully they can, and then they'll be able to say that, and that will be a way for people to choose a vendor.
And Vibhaa, I think, can you add to that?
Yes, and so one of the things, the 8A program does is make sure that the principal owner is a US citizen. I think that's very important. And another layer that we can add, because it's really, that's a lot of delicate information, and we want to make sure the right companies have it, is also just a potential idea is a US citizen with top secret. It opens a lot of the world of the veterans that have served to be able to stop those companies. I think there's tremendous trust. You don't want the wrong people becoming auditors.
It's funny, do a LinkedIn search on top secret. Sometimes see how many people, it says right there, don't post it. Hey, Katie, let me ask you a question that's been on my mind, and I see it popping up here. But if I use Office 365, use an example. If I use Microsoft Office 365, their E3 version, which is the business version that's out there, that many small businesses might be using on the DoD side. Should I be looking at having to get off that? Do you know anything about Microsoft that they've already got a lot of the protections in place? And this might piggyback also off of Kat, but.
So part of one of the big things that we've worked on is getting cybersecurity as a service, right? That's a big deal. I talked about CMMC Level 2 and how that's the bridge to help small businesses. Look at the investment. Do you want to make the, to Kat, what Kat was saying, as you're going through all your inspections and audits, do you really want to organically own that capability? Or do you want to get cybersecurity as a service? So the part of what the accreditation body will have is we're working with NSA and another couple of entities to create a testing environment that the right tests so that you can actually use Microsoft, if they were to put together a package that a small business can, buy, this is a certified product that will provide you all of these component parts of the CMMC as a service that correlates. And when I started this whole movement back last year, it was that if we mapped out exactly what the small businesses would need as capability, that the industry, the market would respond with packages that align to it. And they have. You'll see when the AB marketplace comes out that you'll actually see, I can't say because I'm not in charge of products, but I have definitely, and Stacy and I have definitely sat through hundreds of companies that have come through and demonstrated their packaged products to be able to provide to small businesses as the way to buy down the risk, buy down the cost, and have the capability at like level 3, or what kind of product suites you'd need to have a level 5. Stacy, do you want to add anything to that?
I'll take it off mute, right? Yeah, no, it 100%. I think that you're going to see a burgeoning industry for security as a service, and I think the accreditation body is who we're kind of leaning on right now to help us get those products through and tested and approved. And they will have on their marketplace a listing of different products that can be used that meet the standards and the requirements. That's going to be part of their marketplace as well.
And it's not going to be the pay to play, right? It's here's a group of products that were approved to do this capability. What we don't want to do, and I will say the accreditation body is a coalition of the willing. We don't want it to be that, you have to use product X, right? Because that stifles innovation. That stifles what the whole point of the CMMC is about. It's getting the right tools to the right people at the right time, at the right cost to do the right thing.
Right.
No, that's perfect. And it's funny, I was scrolling down while you were talking and there's other questions related to this exact same thing, which is perfect. Hey, quick question, Sherry, on your side. I don't know if it's been answered already, but how did PTACs receive the self-assessment tool? So this is coming from 4 or 5 PTACs.
How did they get it? I received it.
How do they receive it? So the locals.
They received it from me in an email to their program manager. So it's possible if a PTAC employee is asking the question, their program manager did not pass it down to them. And I can send that out again and will. But we received that in December from OSD DPC.
Okay,
so I distributed it probably last December.
I have to break for 1 second. I have a very quick call that is urgent. Sorry.
So this next question, and I don't know, Stacy, it probably falls right into your world, is on CUI, because this is something that I was talking with Vibhaa about a little bit before the call, and understanding CUI data. When you type, a lot of us who are HubZone firms, for example, try to influence a contract to go set aside HubZone by convincing them that we can do it. It's the same thing with any of the requirements that are in a contract. Is there so I guess there's 2 parts to the question, right? How can maybe smalls do that? And then what assistance are contracting officers getting? Because right now there's contracting officers, which you guys probably know, who are confused about the process. And so, and I know you guys have an answer, so just more broadly, what advice can they get?
So one of the things when you're talking CUI and what is it, we're working with DAU and to put together an entire training program for both program managers and contracting officers. So when a program has CUI, it's marked appropriately, because that's like one of the biggest things we've heard from most of the contractors is nobody's told me I have it, right? So the way the process should work is that when you get the RFP, it's going to tell you what is considered to be CUI in that program. And then they will be able to aggregate the data. So say you have something that's just level 3 and you're going to have subs underneath that. Some of those subs may not necessarily be handling that CUI, so they'll only have to be a level 1. At the onset of the program manager will be able to, at a high level, identify those areas where the levels of the data. After contract award, what we will expect is that there would be a kickoff meeting where the program people and your, I have to put in a gig for this information security officers, because they're going to play a big part in this as well, to all get together and discuss the data. Because I know from the primes, not always do you have all of your subs laying flat when you put your proposal together. So you're going to know at a high level that I'm going to have to be level 3, and these subs may only have to be level 1, but I haven't decided how I'm going to handle this one other section. So then you're going to have a conversation with your program person to identify that the levels of information and how they flow down. And then when you get a sub, you're going to have to ensure that that sub meets the certification before they can begin work on the program. And it's right now, there are no waivers. We are not going to have waivers. You either are, that tickles Ms. Arrington, right? You either are certified or you're not. And, you know, one of the discussions I had with one of my colleagues the other day, they were saying, well, we need an exemption. I said, when we have a classified program where we're giving secret data, we never say, oh, we're going to give you an exemption. You don't have to meet the secret classification level. You have to do it. Same with CUI, because it's such a huge issue with being an open wound where we lose so much information because of our adversaries. We have to lock it down. Now, does that answer exactly what you were looking for, Neil?
It does. And that's part of it too. It's evolving thing. That's one of the things I really want people who are listening is to realize that everything about CMMC is a little bit agile in the sense that you're learning as you go along. You've got the big picture solid, and then as you move forward, you'll begin to figure out whether there's changes. But you've got CUI lined up for kind of instructing the COs.
Well, and so our 15 programs that we're going to start with as our initial rollout is going to be a wealth of knowledge and experience for us as we walk through it. And I promise you that we're going to find stumbling blocks as we go through there that we're going to have to figure out and come up with processes and procedures as we go, because no two programs are alike. But if we get the methodology down, if we get the way we can work it through set, then I think that'll help all the explain it and train it throughout the process.
You're mute. You're mute.
Katie, you're on mute.
I am mute. There you go. So what would be ideal? What is the dream state, right? Is that we all embraced cybersecurity as much as we embrace safety every day. And think about that and the long haul. So the contracts that we're rolling out, will we find problems? You betcha. I mean, I asked this of industry and of the PTACs and of the small businesses. Yes, can a small business put the price of the CMMC? Yes, we're rolling it in. Security is an allowable cost. That's what the whole point of this is.
Well, let me roll
it's in your indirect rates. It's in
there's a bunch of other questions I just want to knock out to make sure, because there's confusion in here that it's really important to me that we just rapidly go through them, because somebody is asking, and clearly I'm causing some of the confusion just right now, is can a small business self-assess and certify, or are we required to go through PTAC? So it's not even the self-assess. It's like somehow the message didn't go across that it is not PTAC certifying, and then
No, and the
self-assess.
PTACs are not going to issue certifications. They're going to get you ready. You're still going to have to go to the accreditation body and request that you have an auditor come. The auditor will come and do an insight visit to go through your evaluation and issue. The only people that can issue you a license are going to be the accreditation body. The auditor is going to submit their report. The AB then submits your license number. The PTACs are there to just help you get ready. If there's questions, if you need help or guidance on how to get to things, that's their role.
Let me clarify the one thing though. The PTACs are there to serve as guidance, to give you, tips. They're not getting you ready, right? I mean, just because people will take the question away and think that that they're I'm assuming, right? They're not coming into the companies and getting them ready. That's not the message we're trying to communicate, right?
No, the PTACs can't do the work for the business, but the PTACs can provide the checklist. They can explain the checklist in terms that the business can understand. If there's some, jargon that the business isn't understanding, or more likely an expectation, like what can I do to meet this expectation? The PTACs can help with that, but the business is going to have to go implement the multi-factor authentication and apply to the accrediting body. The PTAC's just a helper, just like Katie said.
And just expanding on Katie, that self-assessment, just because that question got asked multiple times in here as well. There's no self-assessment process. You prepare yourself. If you can address that, just to make sure they hear it again.
So we are not, the whole point of what we have currently is this self-attestation model where you say, I'm really good. We need to trust but verify. That's the whole point of the CMMC. So you will receive tools where you can walk through to find out where you are, but there will be no self-attestation that the government the Department of Defense will accept. Here's why, right? So we have to trust but verify. We need to ensure that you're actually implementing the controls that we need you to do, that we're validating that you're implementing the controls because we're going to be paying for them. So we want to ensure you're doing them. And then the last thing on why we're going to make a CMMC certified auditor come to you, is because we're buying down the risk of foreign ownership and shell companies, right? Part of this is that we're going to make it really hard for those people trying to steal our IP, take our hard-earned tax dollars. We're going to make it harder. We're going to buy down the risk. We're going to buy up the uncertainty on them. And in that delta is where you guys as small businesses, for the most part, do amazing things. Right now, the adversary has the edge, right? They can set up shell companies. They can fake, they're stealing cage codes. They're stealing your cage codes and actually routing false payments to them. It's happening. So the whole thing of self-attestation is because we need to trust but verify. The audit for CMMC Level 1 is so easy and will be so low cost. I promise you, it will not be that impactful. It just will make you a better business to partner with.
And that's perfect. Thank you. And I'm going to answer a whole bunch of questions here. Could the panel, I'm going to just do a clean up a bunch of them. Tell me if I get any wrong there, right? One of the questions is, what are the DFAR clauses? They're in their documentation. You can find them on the links that are in the chat that we keep putting in there. So the DoD and the AB site, you can find them there, and they're tied directly to each level. The next one was in here.
One DFAR clause. One. It's DFAR 252.204.7012.
-7012, yes.
And then this question was, Katie, approximately 96% will be level 1 or 2. What's the estimated percentage split between level 1 and 2? And I was thinking, I was hearing you say we're not really trying to target anybody to 2. It's
Right.
1 and then kind of jump.
2 is just going to be, it's going to be the bridge to get from 1 to 3. But the bulk share of the contracts that we have will be CMMC Level 1. 0.06% are estimated to be at level 5.06% at level 4. I would assume that if you look at the amount of clear defense contractors we have today, CDCs, they're less than 15,000. So well over 90% of the supply chain will be CMMC level 1.
Here's a question for the PTACs on, if I heard correctly, PTACs have to be level 1 certified. How will the CMMC audit costs be paid? DLA, OSD, et cetera. So this is coming from the PTACs.
The PTACs will charge that against their PTAC cooperative agreement.
There you go. Answered live. I'm just rolling through a lot of these. So one of the questions I had for you, Vibhaa, is just what kind of advice do you have with other business owners? Because I'm assuming there's some stuff you do internally to get yourself prepared for level 1 or even level 3 if that's where you're going. And then how do you make some of the decision of who to work with as external vendors to help you with some of these cyber needs?
So thank you, Neil, for that question. Definitely keeping a good cyber hygiene for all small businesses, just like we do for our home. It's not very difficult. Level 1, again, is something you can maintain very easily. Level 3, obviously, I think we're waiting. I think it's in May or June. It's supposed to, the decisions are made, and they will, there'll be guidance to us. We're ready. We will, as I understand, there will be 2 different vendors. One would come and first do like a precursor, and then there will be another. So correct me if I'm wrong, Stacy, will there be 2 vendors that we have to?
So it depends on you. If you choose to have a vendor come consult with you to help you get ready, then you would have, and then you would have to have another vendor that would come do the assessment. If you yourself go through the assessment guides that we put out online and you feel ready, then you can call an assessor to come look at your company from the get-go. You don't necessarily have to have a consultant come in. So it just depends on your company paradigm, whether or not you have internal people that can interpret and get the company ready or not.
Thank you for that, Stacy. So in our case, Neil, we feel we can get ourselves ready. Usually the rules that are put out, they're pretty easy if you follow it to the T, and our team is very good. And we would do the first part ourselves, and then wait for the guidance as to the vendor we would pick.
No, that's for, and Kat, I might go to you on that same question, but because this is kind of in your world, some guidance you might provide of how firms can choose other companies that can help, because the CMMC folks, Ellen, Laura, Katie, and others have put out these notices about, unethical business practices out there, for lack of a better way. But there's ethical people out there who can help you. What's some of your guidance on how we can identify and vet them out?
Yeah, so I would just say the things that I've seen just from watching, some peers. First of all, there's some awesome people that are in this new ecosystem, right? CMMC consulting, and I've learned a lot from some of them. But the things that I've seen from people that kind of make me stop and go, are the language they're using in marketing, right? Like, come to our webinar, we'll get you level 3 certified. Like, that's super misleading. It's not good marketing. It's not ethical. So watch for that. But I think the big thing that I would do is when you're looking at a company, cybersecurity is very different from the auditing world. Go with a company that has an auditor or that's working with an auditor who understands that side of it. And I only say that because so much of this is about the documentation, and that is the auditing world, right? So much of level 3 is that you're writing it down, that you have these policies and procedures in place, and that you can show that you're following them and you're doing them. So that's definitely my personal opinion. But just look for people that are established, that maybe have people on staff that have a background, that can talk the talk, that can, and that are, you know, making those right hires. So you might come across a company that doesn't have an auditor, but maybe they have, you know, a wealth of experience in it, and everything that they're saying sounds good. Maybe they go get certified as one of these third-party groups. So like that is going to be a really, that's going to be a good marker, a good badge if you go with a company who already has that, right? They're auditing other people, so why couldn't they be your consultant? But if you don't go with somebody like that, then I would just be really careful and look for people that actually have the experience.
Yeah, I'd agree. Your best bet is to go with somebody who's gone and taken the training and tested out and has the credentials to be able to understand exactly what they're talking about.
Hey, before I close up and thank the panel, I did want to just restate something I hope the panelists agree solidly with, that for any of you who are on, and I'm so excited 200 plus people have stayed for 90 minutes for this, that as you look at CMMC and you have questions about it and you're planning your own strategy around it, look to your local PTACs as a great source of folks to talk to. And then the escalation path is the accreditation board. Their website has a ton of information, and the people who keep joining the committees are very helpful. And then frankly, the last resort, kind of like an 𝐓𝐡𝐞 is the last resort compared to a small business professional is the first resort. The DoD is there and they have their site, et cetera. So there's kind of your path. I was going to throw it, Katie, your way to kind of close out, or any last minute message you'd want this group of people to know and to pass along to our three friends.
So that's the first thing, right? We need to make sure that pass this information along. The best word of mouth, the best marketing, the best way to get the entirety of this community is you. If you make posts on LinkedIn, if you reach out through your professional network and say, hey, this is coming, can we collaborate? Can we talk about it? It's the best way. The other thing I'll mention, one of the big, other issues is this, how is your company looking at your security as a posture? So if any of you are struggling with your leadership or your C-suite that they don't understand this, please reach out to us. We are more than happy to engage and educate. How a company is postured on their cybersecurity is absolutely going to be very relevant to how businesses continue to be valued throughout the ecosystem going forward. Your cybersecurity stance, how your company is prepared and reacting is going to become paramount. So any kind of collaboration that Stacy and I and our team can do to help you, let us know.
Yeah, feel free to reach out for sure.
No, that is perfect. And everybody has the LinkedIn contact on the flyers, et cetera. So I want to thank our panelists for sure for coming in, for being so early that we had no technical hurdles on a time when Zoom is experiencing probably 1,000% usage right now. And I want to do a special thank you to Kat for stepping in at the last moment and helping me to deal some of the logistics. And last one is Cecilia's my silent partner on logistics and been answering all the questions on the chat or putting out little links and something. Thank you for that. If anybody has questions, feel free to reach back out to the folks that are on the panel or reach out to me and I will point you right to a PTAC.